Hey everybody, this is going to be a video that's going to hopefully help future Arizona owners of Teslas and maybe current ones around some things that I've learned after owning a Model 3 for 8 months now. I moved to Arizona end of last year in 2019 and bought or leased a Tesla Model 3. So this video will hope and be helpful for those that are looking to buy and just things to consider before you make that purchase that I found out. So some of this stuff is actually going to apply for those that live in Arizona. I'm in South Scottsdale, and some of this may apply just in general for Tesla owners. So basically, this is my Model 3. It's a standard range plus. I have it 20% tinted all the way around. Technically, that's not fully legal, but generally I've heard it's not a big deal. You won't usually get pulled over. I've had no issues. I think it looks really, really nice as far as 20%. And that's really needed to kind of cut down on the heat. Other things to note that I regret not doing is tinting the front windshield, which is not legal, but if you tint 70% in the front, that supposedly reduces the heat by 50%. And you can't really tell that it's tinted and helps with daytime visibility. So I can't imagine too many issues with that, because I will say when the sun is shining, it gets crazy hot right in the front, and that also makes the whole cabin really, really hot. Other things to note in Arizona, there's tons of rocks everywhere. So as you can imagine, if you just drive generally, I've got 3 chips on this car after 8 months. I have full glass coverage with Progressive, and Progressive charges me about $2,000 a year for comprehensive coverage for a lease. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Another thing is I have, and maybe I'll do a video on that later, I have Powerwall and Tesla Solar, but that company, when they came out, I needed a wall charger, so there's a lot of charging options for Tesla. This is their 1450 wall plug charger. It was $500, same cost as the hardwired version, but this allows me to charge the standard range plus up to 32 miles per hour, and it's just a plug. I can actually take this with me since it's not hardwired. The full hardwired version, I believe, can charge up to like 40 miles an hour, but it really doesn't matter. It can charge the full car in like 5 hours overnight, and you just plug it in. Tesla, I paid them $300 to install this electrical and the dry. If you have a dryer outlet, this works great. They're kind of sporadic with availability for that item. It's usually the hardwired one. So other things to note, let's check out the car. So other things to note, these cars do not come, the standard range plus, sorry, this is really dirty, do not come with floor mats. I actually bought these floor mats on Amazon. You can actually find a lot of floor mats on Amazon for about $150. Highly recommended over the cloth, since these are easy to clean, and honestly, I'm not affiliated or sponsored for this video, so there are people that'll actually buy, or they'll give you back your money by writing them a review, so that's what I did. I also paid for these pedals, totally optional. These are performance pedals. They're like, honestly, I found them for like $10 on Amazon, and they're great. You can put them on, and I can take them off before the lease is up. So this is the cabin of the car. Other things to note about this car for Arizona is how hot it gets. So what I was saying before is that this area gets incredibly hot when sitting in the sun. Highly recommend a sun visor or something like that, so that there's the obvious benefits with the sun, but the other non-obvious benefit is that this car has something called cabin overheat protection, where the car won't get above, I believe it's 105 degrees, and will keep the car, as long as it has enough charge, it'll keep it below 105 degrees, and you don't want that to trigger prematurely. And this will help save that battery. The other thing to note is that this car has all glass. I actually bought this shade screen. It's not a layer. It's kind of like if you have plants and you put a net over it, it blocks about half the sun that comes through. The glass comes pre-tinted, so it doesn't get too hot, but in Arizona, it gets insanely hot. It just, honestly, when I'm driving, the sun still comes through, and you see these little dots. If I look in the rearview mirror, my forehead, I can see the sun coming through, and it gets really hot on a really, really long drive. So I would recommend, this thing was, I think, like $20 on Amazon. I would look at a different one. This one, it works, but if you put your hand up to the glass when you're driving, when it's 110 out, 100 degrees out, it gets really, really hot. My rear is also tinted 20%, so that's all around but I've had no issues with visibility. It's super comfortable for passengers, and the car generally has been performing really well. Other things to note that I kind of wish that I knew prior, or just things that aren't necessarily deal breakers about this car, are that the cabin noise is actually pretty loud. You'll see things like that with road noise. I actually invested in, you'll notice this door seals. This is like $30 kit on Amazon that honestly, I can't really tell. It's so subtle, the noise difference, that it doesn't really matter, and that was kind of a waste of money. It's so loud that, like, my wife's Honda Insight over there is a $25,000 car and feels a lot quieter. Anyone who's owned any car that basically, it's just a quieter cabin. I don't know if this is better on the Model Y. It definitely is pretty quiet on the Model S and X, but for the 3, for some reason, I think partly due to these windows, you know, just the car doesn't have a frame, and I really kind of hear the noise kind of up here in this area, but that's neither here nor there. So generally, this car has been really great to own. Other things to note in Arizona is that you get cheaper, it's a lot cheaper to register the car. And this, I heard this may be changing. For 5 years, the cost to register the car covers you for 5 years. You get HOV lane. It was like $200 or less, and that covered the registration for 5 years. My wife's Insight, for example, because Arizona charges a percentage of the car's value, something like that, it was like $500 for a couple of years, and then she's gonna have to pay that again in a couple of years, versus I'm done, $200, and this covers me for 5 years, which is great. Overall, this car is really fantastic to drive. You see, there's tons of videos all over YouTube on why it's great. The fitment issues, the alignment issues, the quality issues you've heard of in the beginning really aren't any issues anymore. I haven't had any issues with this car with things like that, and usually it's kind of like the loudest people usually make it seem like most of the fleet. There's some quality issues there. Other thing is on road trips, something to note is supercharging is not great for the car, so keep that in mind when you are supercharging all the time. It's fast, but honestly, charging at home is better for the battery. The battery level to charge this at, even though it says it's rated 250 miles, kind of, to be honest, a lot of the roads and on longer trips, I get pretty much the rated range, which is on the screen here. The way to read this is that it's watt hours per mile. So that has to be at 220, meaning I use 220 watts to go 1 mile. And that has to be at 220 to get the 250 rated range for the standard range plus. And on long trips, that's definitely not the case. But lifetime, I've been able to get pretty close on this car, which is 10,000 miles, 237 watt hours per mile. So all around Scottsdale and Phoenix, off the 101, the 10, the 51, any of those, like the range, I get it's pretty good. But once you go on longer trips, and obviously headed up to like North Scottsdale or something, the range will, it's a lot harder to get the rated range. And you're not even supposed to charge it to 100%. It's not good for the battery. So I've had this car for 8 months, and when I charge this thing to 100%, I get like 240, 235 on the range. And it's really weird, right? You never have that concern. You're not worried about if your car is rated for 400 miles. You're not worried about not getting 400 miles out of your gas tank. But for this car, if you're looking to buy, it's something that Elon and others have said, that you don't want to charge the car to 100%. They said 90% is okay. And I think the best way, that I looked at a chart, I can't find it, but the best way to describe it is when the state of charge, so when the battery is charged, when it's at 100% or even 90%, because the recommended range is to keep the car between around 20 to 80% rule of thumb, is that, this is my analogy, this could be wrong, so you guys can call me out, is that when the car is at above 90% or 100%, think of the battery, like, just flex all your muscles, and it's like this all the time, and just like, I need to go. And that's not good for the battery if it's like strained like that. But as the state of the charge of the battery drops to like 90%, the stress on the battery drops dramatically. There's a chart online, hopefully you can find it, that really put this into perspective. And then when you go to 80%, the stress on the battery is very low. And then between like 40 and 60%, there's like no stress on the battery whatsoever. And this partly kind of makes sense when we get electronics. When you buy them on Amazon, they come like half charged. That's part of the reason. They don't want to damage the battery, and the state of charge is at like half. But if you're going to charge it above 90% or to 100%, just make sure that that finishes and then you're driving off pretty quickly so that it's not staying in that mode long enough. You'll even notice if you're charging to 100% for a while, what I mean by a while is maybe 10% of the battery, regenerative braking, which means the car absorbs energy back and uses the motor to regenerate energy, is limited. Like the car will actually roll forward rather than pull back, which is the regenerative braking, because the car has so much regain built in. That's my garage light just kind of shut off. So generally, owning a Tesla in Arizona is really, really key. The main thing for me that I would recommend is making sure that you're set up with a home charger situation, which applies to owning it nearly everywhere. Make sure that you're tinting the car. I would highly recommend tinting the front 70%. It doesn't really look tinted, but really helps with the heat. Buying some sunshades and getting some tint up here. And other than that, those are my thoughts. If anyone has any questions around owning a Tesla or anything like that, happy to share that. Happy to share pricing or any of these things. My lease right now is 15,000 miles a year. I have my own opinions on why I'm leasing, because I do think these cars are going to get significantly better in the coming years, and I kind of want to upgrade as time goes on rather than owning it. But car's been great, and also be referred. So other thing to note is I'll have my referral link below, but if you know someone that has a Tesla, use their referral link because you get 1,000 free Supercharger miles. Or if you have your own Tesla, you can actually, this is a pro tip, you can refer yourself. So I have solar, and I'll get into a video on solar later. I got a referral link for owning solar, and then I referred myself to buy a Tesla. So I got 2,000 Supercharger miles by referring myself. So that's something to keep in mind when you are buying it, because Tesla doesn't really do too many discounts. They really don't do discounts, and if you were to ever get a deal, you'll want to buy towards, this is not always the case, it's hard to time this, but if you buy towards the end of a quarter, they're publicly traded. So if you do get and buy a car, chances are a salesperson or your local store will call you and saying, hey, would you mind getting into a car earlier with some existing inventory? And you may be able to get free upgrades. They actually, when I bought this car, reached out and asked if I would like to take ownership of an existing inventory car early, but I hadn't yet moved to Scottsdale yet. I moved from New York, and I placed the order to try and time it so that when I arrived, I'd have a vehicle. And I actually was assigned a car. I hadn't moved out yet because it's really hard to time. It's like a 2-month wait right now as of July 2020. And I was like, I can't get the car yet. I'm literally not there. Like, I'll be there in a week. And they said, well, we're gonna have to give up your VIN, and you may have to just take that risk and wait for another car to be available. And they said, if you take it, we can get you some upgrades. These were the different options. There was like supercharging miles they could have offered. They could have offered premium connectivity was on the table. There was also a rim upgrade. So there's like a $1,500 wheel upgrade, which I think now is $2,000 that they were willing to throw in. Other options were that they could give you a paint upgrade because Tesla charges for all their paint colors other than white right now. And they were willing to basically give you maybe a white interior or a different color paint. So those are the different ways that you're able to save money. I have heard of rare cases where others may have been able to get a small discount, but it's truly if a Tesla needs the sales for the end of the quarter push to help with their numbers, and if there's existing inventory that they know that if you've ordered one online and they have some available in stock, that they can get you to take those different colors despite your order. But that typically only happens towards the end of the quarter. For Model S and X, you've seen them run free unlimited supercharging. That has never come to Y or 3 before, but those are some ways that they've incentivized buying the S and X at the end of the quarters to offer free unlimited supercharging. So use your own referral code or use somebody else's to get some money savings. And then if you get towards the end of the quarter, that might be another way that you might be able to save with like some free upgrades. Anyways, I hope that was helpful. Some tips just for Arizona generally, but also Tesla ownership if you're thinking about buying. My name's Robert. If you have any questions, throw them in the comments, and I'll do more videos on this for things that you guys might find helpful. All right, talk to you in the next one. Peace.